Good evening and welcome to the Buck Stops here. I'm Vishnu Shom. We've got a packed program today. The very latest findings as far as the AgustaWestland VVIP helicopter scam is concerned. We'll be bringing you details of this document. It's an Enforcement Bureau document, an ED document which has got a lot of details on how middlemen in India systematically breached the Indian Air Force. My colleague Tanima Biswas will be joining us momentarily for that. We'll also be bringing you the framework of how the middlemen in the AgustaWestland deal actually managed to get into India, how they worked with the Tyagis, how money came in and what it all means. And finally on the show, a new quota in Gujarat after the Patel agitation a few months back. Now quotas for class, not for caste. Is this a Gujarat government masterstroke or is it in fact a mistake? But let's move on now to our top story. Details coming from this Enforcement Directorate document that we've been referring to. I'm joined by my colleague Tanima Biswas. Tanima, how does this document indicate that the Indian Air Force itself had been breached by middlemen?
Right, Vishnu, we have the Enforcement Directorate's attachment order on Christian Michel's property. This is an official document regarding the investigation details which ED has got on the Agusta case so far. And if we just refer to one of the pages, which are conclusions of the investigation that the ED has done for now, it says that Christian Michel, Mr. Hashke and Carlos Gerosa, they had colluded along with their Indian associates in order to make inroads into the Indian Air Force and thereby influence and subvert the consistent standard of the Indian Air Force regarding mandatory service ceiling of the helicopter. Basically saying that it was these middlemen who actually managed to swing the deal in favor of AgustaWestland, bringing the mandatory requirements down from 6,000 meters to 4,500 meters. Also, over here the ED points out the money trail, talking about how 42 million euros had been promised to Christian Michel. Later it was revised to 30 million euros which was actually paid to him. Some of this money which was used by Christian Michel to purchase properties in Delhi, which he sold a lot of them, but one of them wasn't sold, and that was the property which was attached by ED. And now the latest that we have is that former Air Chief Captain Tyagi has in fact been summoned by the Enforcement Directorate for questioning next week. The first time that the ED is actually calling SP Tyagi to come and join the probe, because as this report also shows that inroads were made by these middlemen into the IAF. So who was the insider who was helping them? These are some of the questions which will be posed to the former Air Chief as he joins the probe next week. Hopefully he'll be joining the probe next week with the ED, because the investigation had come to a standstill still so far, but now with renewed efforts they are hoping to actually connect the money trail to some of these people inside Indian Air Force also who were helping these middlemen. All right,
Tanima, thanks very much for joining us. Well, what we're going to actually bring you at this stage are a couple of important points on how exactly the scam worked. Now, with me over here is this huge document. It's more than 250 pages long. And this is the actual order from the Italian court. And with the assistance of the independent journalist Vaiju Naravane, who will be joining us in this program in a few minutes from now, we've been able to get key aspects of this deal. And what we're going to show you now is actually details of how it all began, how all of these people got together and came into India. Early 2005, Guido Hashka, a key middleman, you would have heard his name over the last few days, with India contacts, he reached out to Finmeccanica. What is Finmeccanica? It is the parent arm of the AgustaWestland company. In October 2005, Giuseppe Orsi, the former CEO of Finmeccanica, met Hashka and a bond developed between these two men. They started to work with each other. On the 22nd of January 2006 to the 25th of January 2006, in that period, there was a meeting between AgustaWestland executives, the Tyagi brothers, who are cousins of the then serving Chief of Air Staff, the man whose picture you can see over there, Air Chief Marshal SP Tyagi. They met at the home of one of the Tyagi brothers here in Delhi. Think about it, a serving Chief of Air Staff meeting his cousins who happened to be middlemen, along with associates of AgustaWestland who would have been aware of just what they were trying to do. March 2006, the approval for these choppers suddenly goes up from 8 to 12. Now this is a move that has been slammed. It has been severely criticized by the Comptroller and Auditor General. Now mid-2006 onwards, there have been other important developments. The man on your screen, Christian Michel, a mysterious middleman, a senior middleman who's had lots of dealings in India in the past, along with his father prior to him, is brought in by Giuseppe Orsi, the CEO of Finmeccanica, to be the main middleman overseeing everything. And here's when it starts getting fast. Things start moving. January 2007, according to this court document, the court order from Italy, there is another meeting, a key meeting between Air Chief Marshal Shashi Tyagi, the Tyagi brothers, Guido Hashka, Bruno Spagnoloni and Carlo Geroso, all either middlemen or with AgustaWestland. This meeting takes place in the office of one of the Tyagi brothers close to Shangri-La Hotel here in Delhi. And just a few days later, on the 3rd of January 2007, an agreement is signed between the front company, which is set up, the shell company, and AgustaWestland. What is this for? Success fee. What happens and how much money does anybody actually make if the helicopter deal is signed? And they agreed the success fee would be 5% of the value of the contract. That's the money they would make if the helicopter deal was signed. And just about a month later, the Integrity Pact, the official Integrity Pact to prevent middlemen to be involved in this deal, is signed between the Government of India and AgustaWestland. Think about it. A month later, the government is saying we will sign an Integrity Pact. A month prior to that, the middlemen were sitting over here in Delhi trying to decide what cut they would get when the helicopter deal goes through. The proposals were opened on the 12th of February 2007, and voila, as we all know, AgustaWestland wins the bid. And just a quote, there have been so many in that judgment on Shashi Tyagi, the former air chief. Remember, he retired after this entire process in a few months. On the 31st of March, he was out of there. The deal was done. He was out of there. The judgment says Air Chief Marshal Tyagi was the only person who could have influenced the lowering of the operating height of the helicopters during the trial process, is what they are referring to. One among many scathing judgments, statements on Shashi Tyagi, the former air chief, which the Italian court has made mention of. I should say right now that Air Chief Marshal Shashi Tyagi has been called by the Enforcement Directorate in the last couple of hours. I believe the appearance will be in the next couple of days. So is this where it ended as far as Shashi Tyagi's role, Air Chief Marshal Shashi Tyagi's role was concerned with AgustaWestland? In fact, it was not. He was also wined and dined in Italy. He loved operas, and he had seemed to have a lot of links with Italy during this visit. My colleague Sunetra Chaudhary has the story.
The court talks about just how 3 months after taking over, the former Air Chief Tyagi overturned the 6,000 meters ceiling for VVIP choppers that made Agusta eligible. Now, the court quoted CAG papers and said it can be reasonably affirmed his early knowledge was interesting fact. The court is referring to CAG notes that said that the tender with changed specifications was floated soon after the communication from Air Chief. Now, while the Air Chief is not speaking now, he had told NDTV on Tuesday that this change of specification was not his decision. And the question really is that if the Italian court is relying on CAG report to prove their case, why isn't the CBI using the CAG report? The CBI says CAG is an audit while they focus on investigation, and money trail takes much longer. That's the CBI's point of view. The court has used Agusta official Saponara as a witness who admitted in court that they paid for their Opera Verdi tickets, dinner and stay at the Grand Hotel in Milan. His explanation that the air chief, or what they call Major General in that order, Saponara said that he seemed to be passionate about opera and its lyrics. The court notes in its order that it wasn't just an evening out of leisure, but because it was attended by convicted businessman Orsi, that's the head of Finmeccanica, and former Italian Air Chief Camponari was also there at that dinner and opera. The deal actually was signed soon after that night out. The deal signed just a few months, almost a year later, in 2007.
Well, joining us now, the senior Congress leader, Mr. Anand Sharma, also joining us from the BJP, Nalin Kohli. Gentlemen, I'd like to thank both of you for joining us. Let me go first across to Nalin Kohli. Nalin, the Congress party has today said that yes, you did go ahead and blacklist AgustaWestland in July last year, shortly after you came to power. But then within a period of 40 days, you allowed AgustaWestland back in. Why did you do that?
No, that's not the central question. These are all the questions that are at the periphery. And the entire discourse can't be shifted from the center to the periphery just because it is inconvenient to answer the central questions. So what is the central question? That a bribe has
but
been.
answer this question, Nalin.
I will.
There are lots to say. I accept what you're saying, that it's
So
not
may
the
I
central
answer what
question. But let's get to that central question in a while. We'll be dealing with that central question for several days. We've got no answers. You have provided us no answers.
Well,
nobody
Vishnu, let
has.
me go. Okay, if you have finished, Vishnu, then I would say you are entitled to your question as I am entitled to my answer. You certainly don't expect me to outsource
Okay,
my
go ahead,
answer
Nalin. Go ahead.
So I'll finish my answer the manner I'd like to think it's correct. So as I said, what is the central question? That a bribe has been paid. That a court ruling has confirmed it in Italy after due legal process. Two people are convicted. They are in jail. They have been also fined millions of dollars of rupees. So the central question is what? A, who received the bribes in India? And further, as Mr. Amit Shah, party president, has pointed out, that the tender was altered or the tender was made to ensure that it favored a particular firm, not an original equipment supplier. Now on another channel is coming that Finmeccanica, at that time, the particular wing of it, which was dealing with all this, through the Tyagi brothers, was also trying to get deals done in the BSF for planes.
Yeah, that's
so the
also
Congress
there,
Square Party is
Italian
asking all the
document.
question. Now,
It's there
with regard to the question that you are
Yes.
asking about the blacklisting,
Yes.
the Congress first has to answer two things. A, why did they put out an incorrect or even a false statement in terms of saying that this was done by them? And why did they make a wild allegation, even if it is so, to try and insinuate that the Prime Minister of India was entering into deal with the Prime Minister of Italy? So these are two things.
No,
with
but you're
regard
still
to
not
this,
answering
the
the
Defense
question.
Ministry, the Defense
These are
Ministry-
allegations.
the
Fair
Defense
enough, Nalin.
Ministry-
You're not answering my question.
No, I am.
Why, after a
I am.
period of 40 days of blacklisting AgustaWestland, did you allow them back in?
No, I don't think so that it is in the manner that it is being put there.
Then
The
why
investigation
is
stands.
AgustaWestland being allowed
I don't
in the
think-
naval,
No, Vishnu,
light,
you may
utility,
ask your questions
helicopter
in
deal
as many manners as you
to-
may wish.
to try
I'm going to
to-
answer what I'm saying, but still remind you of what the central question is.
I
Someone
agree.
has taken the bribe.
No. The central
therefore,
question is
therefore,
corruption.
that doesn't change.
The central
because
question is
whether
a money
Augusta,
trail. The
No, I'm
central
answering it.
question is
I'm
who
answering
made
it.
money and who didn't. I accept that
No,
completely.
so therefore that's the central question. What is the whole
Absolutely,
corruption
but-
about?
but-
With regards to
it's an
whether there is a
important
tie-up
question.
with Tatas or whether it's regard to supply of
No,
spares
but how is
under
this
a
not
particular
important?
contract.
If you
But
are
is it-
criticizing the Congress
Vishnu, you're
and
not
the
hearing the
UPA,
answer.
if
You're
you
asking
are
a question.
criticizing the
I'm sorry,
UPA
Vishnu, you're not
for
hearing the answer.
blacklisting,
I'm answering
for not
exactly what
having
you asked,
done
but you're
enough,
more interested in
then why have
continuing
you
with the
allowed?
question without
Then why
hearing
have
the
you
answer?
allowed them to actually come back in Augusta
No, no.
Westland? It's an
Well,
honest
well,
question.
you're still not hearing the answer, Vishnu. So therefore, I'm coming back to it. The question of blacklist, or the better word is putting on hold,
Yes.
would deal with the principal question of whether that firm is to supply that contract and whether that firm would be in a position to start supplying equipment of a nature. But if there are issues related to supply of spares
Right.
for existing and other contracts, which may not be exactly the very
Correct.
firm's wing that has supplied this, is a separately
That is a
parallel,
very important
absolutely
point.
independent
That is a
thing.
very
Now,
important
those
point, and I accept that
I
argument
haven't
completely.
finished my answer. Those issues would be, as I would expect, part of what the Defense Minister of India would say when he is speaking in Parliament.
Okay. Mr. Anand Sharma, Nalin has made a very important point that, look, yes, they have been allowed in. He said that indirectly, but there is a context. You cannot blanket ban an entire company as large as Finmeccanica and AgustaWestland. If you are to do that,
I didn't put it the way you're putting it.
no, I'm putting it like that because
Yeah,
I believe
that's
that
your
is a correct.
interpretation. I haven't
believe
said
that
so.
is a correct
Are
interpretation
you
of it.
asking me a question?
So,
or
Mr.
want me
Sharma,
to listen
Mr.
to
Sharma,
this
would you accept
analysis?
that this entire Congress versus BJP,
Please,
you have not banned,
let
you have
me-
not banned. It's not ultimately about banning everything. You can't do it.
Please, let me put it in the right context. There were negotiations which were started way back in 2002. There were mandatory requirements for operations which were changed in 2003, at the behest of the principal secretary of the then Prime Minister, which was not a UPA government. I'm not levelling any accusations. And there was a displeasure, in fact, which is recorded in 2003, that YSPG and PMO were not taken into confidence.
Yes.
And they lowered or altered the operational requirements from an altitude of 6,000 meters to 4,500.
Yes.
Mr. Amit Shah today, which was interesting to hear him, he is neither a chief investigator, he is the party president. He should not preempt when Parliament is in session. Now, who is this Mr. Tyagi? Nobody is asking this question. And many of the relatives. When you look at the list of the who's who of the Vivekananda Foundation, which was headed by the President.
Okay, sir, you made lots of points. I have to interrupt because it's becoming a monologue now. I will come back to you. I want to go across to Nalin at this particular stage. We've got time, so I will come back to you. Nalin, the bottom line is this. There have been allegations made by the BJP, by several leaders, that Sonia Gandhi is accountable for telling people where the bribe money went. In all of this time, and since the time you came to power, this was a deal which was being investigated. The CAG has been stinging in its indictment of this entire helicopter deal. Nothing has come out. Nothing has come in the Italian judgment either, that either Mrs. Gandhi or Ahmed Patel or Mr. Oscar Fernandez or anybody else made money. Where is the information, or is this all political bluster?
There are some things that Mr. Anand Sharma has said. Let's start with the last. He's a senior parliamentarian, a senior leader. So I won't blame it to him personally. Perhaps the data that's being supplied to him by the Congress research wing is incorrect. Of course, it's not perhaps, it is incorrect. Mr. Tyagi, this question came up yesterday also, and on the channel live at that time, the Vivekananda Foundation pointed out that he had possibly come in for a few days, and it was immediately noted.
No, he was on the executive council. I hate interrupting. We have the published brochures of the Vivekananda Foundation. Don't run away from the truth.
No, I'm not. I'm merely putting in perspective because I'm not a member of the Vivekananda Foundation.
Not for lectures. He was in the executive council.
May I just answer that? I didn't interrupt also,
Please.
Mr. Sharma. So therefore, just to come back to it, I'm merely pointing out what happened. I'm happy to name the channel, but only as a courtesy to both channels. I'm not doing so. I was live on a channel. This point came up while I was live. The Vivekananda Foundation, I clearly said that I can't speak without checking because I'm not a member there, and I'm not also part of that foundation. So they would have an answer. Within that only, they had tweeted out. So I presume it is on their tweets.
No, but again,
I know a member who said there also he had joined for a week and he was asked to leave.
Okay, he was asked to leave.
It was as simple
but
as
please
that.
do answer
So
the
he is
question
not-
I asked you. What is the evidence you have against Ahmed Patel, Sonia
coming on
Gandhi,
that.
and all these Congress leaders?
Who am I to have the evidence? I'm
No,
not
no,
a court of law.
Does the
Who
BJP
am
have
I?
any evidence?
No, so therefore, I'm answering all of that. The point, that was one point. Second is, where did Mrs. Sonia Gandhi's name appear? Not in the BJP manifesto.
No, it appeared in the
It has
judgment.
come. Right. So why it has come in the judgment? It has appeared not in the judgment per se, but I'm told it is part. I am told, and that
Yeah,
is
it is part
reported
of
in the
the judgment.
papers.
You can do
It's
a
part
search
of the
it,
evidence.
as I'm
Yes,
sure
it's
you've
part of
done,
the
but it
evidence.
proves nothing, does it? What does it prove? I'm asking you.
Look, Vishnu, either you have to ask a question and expect an answer, or I'm going to request you keep asking the questions, and I'm happy to
But
only
you're not
listen to
answering.
them.
That's the problem.
Because you see,
Nalin.
the problem is not that. You can't force yourself to hear an answer that only you wish to hear. You have to ask the question and
No,
leave that
you
to
can
my
disagree with
discretion
my
to
question,
answer
but
it the
you're- but
manner
please
in
do
which I'd
answer
like
it
to
one way or the
answer,
other.
and let the viewers decide.
Okay, go ahead,
The viewers
Nalin.
will be the
So
final
the question
judge
is the
whether
same. What
any of my
evidence is there of
submissions
Mrs.
make
Gandhi's
sense
role?
or they don't.
What evidence is there of Mrs. Gandhi's role? I'm
No, what
asking.
evidence is there? Go and file an RTI in the Italian court and collect the entire 50,000, 70,000 or whatever number
So
of
would you
pages are
therefore
there.
agree that there
so
is
that's going to be
nothing-
part? No. But I'm sorry, you are also undermining as a media institution, other media institutions that have published and written about it specifically.
That
Mrs. Gandhi's name is mentioned as part of the evidence of the judgment that has come in Italy is reality based on
My
that.
God.
If you ask me personally,
It's
have you seen it?
outrageous.
No, I
It's
haven't seen it.
outrageous.
But whether the Congress party wants to deny it, they are in their rights to deny it. They are in their rights to file a defamation against those who have published it. They are further in their rights to even go and say that they have no faith in the Italian courts, that they believe that the Italian courts have created an
So Nalin, do
misinterpretation
you
about
believe
it.
that the truth as far as
Who
politicians
was,
in
so
the
therefore, let's
Congress
come one
having
by
made
one.
money?
I'll answer now it politically. 3 points I will make. Politically, to tell you why there may be substance in the allegations made. Number one, if you will recall, an ordinance had been brought in by Dr. Manmohan Singh's government to help Mr. Lalu Prasad Yadav, Who tore that ordinance? Mr. Rahul Gandhi as Vice President, which showed the
what are we
control-
discussing?
do with this?
Vishnu?
No, I'm pointing
What
out
are we
about the-
discussing?
No, Mr. Anand Sharma, I'm
A
pointing out
digression
the
also
trend-
has
No,
to
it's
be
not
within
digression, Mr.
permissible and
Sharma.
acceptable
I
limits.
beg to differ. No,
Come on.
Mr. Sharma, I beg to differ, sir. This is
This
not
is
digression.
shocking.
It is
No,
pointing about
Nalin.
who calls the shots, sir.
Please stay on the subject
calls the shots,
so that
sir?
I can respond to you adequately.
Let me just finish. Then please do, sir. I'm just making 3 short points. It is to show that the decision making, even when on the Prime Minister of India and his Council of Ministers,
is he talking?
publicly was seen that it could
This
come
is
from
too
Mr. Rahul Gandhi and evidently also Mrs. Gandhi. Second, if this issue wasn't so important, I made this point a few times, Mr. Ahmed Patel, whom we don't see on television on a regular basis, as the political advisor, has been on television repeatedly.
Yes, and
So
he's
it must
denied
be a
everything.
matter of importance.
He
It
says
must be a
AP can
matter of
refer to
importance.
anybody.
If it was absolutely worthless. And 3, the most important central thing, there is a conviction of bribe being given. The
Yes,
bribe
there is.
givers are in jail. Someone in the UPA Congress government, when the decision was taken, the purchases was done, has received a bribe. And when you are finding collaterally decision making on that influenced, even if it's on the files, then the question would come, was it on direction of the political leaders? And when the newspapers
Okay,
report
fair
Mrs.
enough.
Gandhi's name, obviously it's going to run back to
Fair enough. All right, gentlemen, I'd like to thank